Well, delving right back into it, I want to read you an essay tonight by someone that posted on the DECO's site, presumably a liberal site dedicated to electing more Democrats into office and so on. And it was quickly demolished by members of that site because it actually delved into much bigger issues than just partisan politics. And I believe this essay deserves some attention because it is about global issues. It is not about partisan politics, and it points out several things which I believe are not quite comfortable for most people, or at least most Americans, to hear. So here it goes. This time simply is not like the last time. One cannot look back at history and say this economic recovery is going to follow the recovery of blah, blah, and blah. One cannot argue that this partisan bickering is just politics as usual, or that this disruption of our social order is just a reflection of the political climate and it will somehow change. One cannot look at today's crop of politicians and say that they are representative as a whole of any aspects or desires or wants or aspirations of the American people as a whole. Our public servants, many of them are becoming more crazed and filled with a type of mental illness that is reflective of self-destructive humans under the threat of absolute extinction. The right acts like vicious rats in a cage. And the response from the rest of the politicians is reminiscent of timid mice fleeing the scene. These changes, unlike the lyrics in the song Tom Sawyer, these changes might be permanent. We're looking at the end of history, not as Fukuyama articulated it, quite the opposite. But here's just one example. Unemployment. While some areas of the country might fare far slightly better than some others, huge swath of America is never recovering. There are whole states and municipalities like Michigan and New Jersey which will never come back. Most manufacturing jobs are never coming back. There is no economic recovery for tens of millions of Americans. The jobs that you are trained for, that you may have paid tens of thousands of dollars for, to get an education for, to get that degree, many of them are not going to come back. They're outsourced. This shift in concentration of wealth by way of capitalism without any kind of conscience whatsoever is the root of all of the destruction that we see about us. It cannot be reversed. It might never be reversed. The powers of wealth are self-serving and self-perpetuating. The system of government we adopted roughly 250 years ago was supposed to be, in theory at least, a bulwark against this kind of thing. But our government is dead. It's not coming back. It's been replaced by corporate power, the power of wealth. Our government is not controlled in government offices. It is controlled in task forces, in boardrooms, and in shareholder meetings. It's an illusion to believe that Congress and the office of the presidency holds any real power in this country. The courts hold what little remaining power of law that remains. As Republicans take control of more and more government offices, the courts will become absolute tools for the wealthy. The circuit courts and the Supreme Court will be loaded, and they mostly already are, with representatives of wealth and privilege doing the bidding of property and corporations over individuals. The perfect example of this was the Citizens United case. Our rights and freedoms, the culmination of some 5,000 years of logic and intellectual thought from the earliest concepts of Greek and Roman ideals of the city-state to the Magna Carta, that has the protection of citizens in mind, actually guaranteed by way of Constitution, have been eaten away, corroded, as the real terrorists have finally won. We're not getting these rights back. The author says we're not ever getting these rights back. I tend to disagree with that assessment. We will get our rights back, but not without a fight. The changes humans have forced upon this planet's environment are permanent as well. The poisoning of the oceans and our lands, the scarring of our mountaintops, the wretched toxic dumps that ooze chemicals where some of our homes sit and some of our children go to school in, that's all continuing. The political changes are semi-permanent as well. It's clear to anyone that has been paying any attention that rank criminality, moral turpitude, brutish abuse of power is the hallmark of our government today. This isn't just our government here in the United States, it goes for many other governments as well. There is evil in the world, and much of it is, I'm afraid, concentrated in Washington, D.C. Screaming and yelling about Obama, Reid, and Pelosi and their inability, or some say their unwillingness, to do anything to stop this evil is not understanding that this process has been going on for decades. Corruption inside Washington and in various state houses throughout this country are loaded with brazenly corrupt politicians. Today's politicians are not much more than legal predators who prey upon citizens, robbing us in broad daylight, ripping away the fabric and protection that this nation held out as a promise. Ordinary working people who try to organize are vilified. Unions are vilified. these were, you know, organizations which were supposed to help ordinary people. Instead, they have been undermined and infiltrated at every level. You know, I can't help shake that feeling that the dream is lost. And the sooner we wake up to reality, the better off we will all be. Because nothing that we thought was just and right ever was just and right. There are nuances to our laws, to our foreign policy in particular, and it becomes a joke, essentially, if the United States is now going to say we're going to uphold human rights all over the globe while torturing, you know, our own detainees. This is the hypocrisy of all this is so brazen and so blatant. It is absolutely amazing that Americans still believe that might makes right, and that everything your television tells you or your mainstream media tells you from day to day is even approaching truth. We need to wake up, people. And we need to cooperate with each other and not vilify and work against each other in order to fight this kind of an onslaught. Because it's going to have a very bad ending if we decide to do so, either out of non-decision, out of complacency, or because we just hate people who think differently than us. On the local level, people will need to get along to survive. And it's not necessary the bully who takes the pulpit in that community. We have to make sure that that doesn't happen. Good night.